Castlevania was an innovative classic in 1986. It was both like and unlike other games of the time. It was like other games because it took all the best parts of games like Mario Bros. And Zelda to create a game that was a culmination of all the best NES games. And unlike because it was very original and introduced several new features that game devs had never used before. It was natural that a sequel should be made, just 11 months after the first game's release. A second game in the series, Castlevania II: Simon's Quest, was released. Despite putting the game together on short notice, the game was very big and very successful, allowing for a third game to be released on NES, and thanks to the success of the original trilogy, Super Castlevania IV and other 16-bit games were able to be created during the SNES era. However, ever since the Angry Video Games Nerds review in 2004 of the game, the general consensus has been that this game was a failed sequel and didn't live up to its predecessor. I'm a big AVGN fan, so naturally I agreed with this for a long time and didn't bother to play the game without cheat codes. But the question I will ask today is Castlevania II really that bad? In my last video, the Donkey Kong Country review, I mentioned that there's 10 points that I think make a game, but I feel like it would be better if I condensed those into 5. Graphics, music, story, gameplay, and bosses. I feel like 5 would be better because it didn't have a lot to say for some categories and had too much to say for others. This way I'll have an equal amount, more or less, for each category. I mean, obviously I'm not going to talk about graphics as long as the story, but you know. So, I'm going to review Castlevania II in each of these respective categories. That way, I can evaluate it fairly. So, let's get into it. First up is graphics. Right off the bat, we can see that Castlevania II's graphics are different from Castlevania. Not just in the way that the sprites look, but the colors. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, however. Castlevania Simon is a light orange color, and most of the backgrounds are blue, so because orange and blue are contrasting colors, Simon pops out. In Castlevania II, Simon is red, and the game includes a lot of green. Changing Simon from orange to red was a good choice, because the game is mostly set in outdoor areas such as forests, where it would make sense to see a lot of green to complement Simon. And to make things better, when night falls everything goes dark, so the green is gone, meaning Simon doesn't pop out anymore. This is a good choice because now it's harder to see him, which fits since it's nighttime and the monsters are all stronger. So overall the graphics are different from the original, but they hold up. If there's any problem with the game, it's not the graphics, that's for sure. Now for music. Everyone knows that Castlevania had a killer OST. It had 12 songs total, including classics like Vampire Killer, Stalker, Nothing to Lose, and Black Knight. But Castlevania II had only 7 songs. With a smaller OST, it's more likely to hear songs over and over again. But at least are the songs good? Oh fuck yeah they are. In fact, they're so good that you don't mind hearing them in the background as you play through the game. Bloody Tears obviously comes to mind, but other songs like Silence of Daylight, Monster Dance, and Dwellings of Doom always play throughout the game. Sure, there's no boss theme, and sure, there's only one theme for every level, but to be honest, I don't really mind that. Honestly, Castlevania II's OST does more than live up to Castlevania's, it surpasses it. While Castlevania does have a good solid OST of 12 songs, Castlevania II's OST, that's a little over half as long, has songs that are 2 times better. And no, I'm not saying that Castlevania's Vampire Killer is half as good as every song from Castlevania II, but I do think that the composer, the legendary James Banana's musical skills only improved in the year between the game's releases. After all, this game gave us Bloody Tears, a song that is associated with the series possibly more than any other song. I know Vampire Killer is sort of Castlevania's national song, but by God is Bloody Tears its national anthem, and yes, those are apparently 2 different things. Long story short, Bloody Tears alone is enough to put this game's OST as one of gaming's best, and it's only one of 7 great songs to prove that this game's music kicks ass. Castlevania's story was pretty simple. After 100 years, Dracula returns from the dead in Transylvania, and the vampire hunter Simon Belmont has to set off and defeat him. But the sequel story really expanded upon this. After Dracula's defeat, his body parts were scattered throughout the countryside, and he placed a curse on Simon. The only way he can rid himself of this curse is by gathering the aforementioned body parts, bringing them to Dracula's castle, and destroying them. To do so, Simon must travel to every corner of Transylvania, locating the 5 parts of Dracula: the rib, the heart, the eyeball, the nail, and the ring. A sequel to a game from the 80s was a good chance to add more to the series' story, and the game developers really took this chance. In fact, they took it and ran with it. This game perfectly used the chance to expand on the greater world of Castlevania, by moving the setting from just Castlevania to all of Transylvania. This gave a chance to show off several important locations in the series, introduce other characters for Simon to interact with, and show off some of the animals of Transylvania. And by that I mean monsters, because apparently in 1698 in Romania, there were thousands of monsters roaming about killing people. Seems legit. Another interesting thing about Castlevania II's story is that it didn't get a direct chronological sequel for the next 3 main series installments. Castlevania III Dracula's Curse was a prequel set over 200 years earlier. Super Castlevania IV's story more or less retold the story of the original, and it wasn't until Rondo of Blood, released in 1993, and only in Japan, that we got a direct sequel to the story of Simon's Quest. So, technically speaking, American audiences didn't get a canon direct sequel to the game until 1997 with Symphony of the Night, 10 years after the game's release. That's kinda crazy. But it goes to show that this game's story really was good, and the developers knew it. Before they made a game to succeed this game's story, they needed to expand on the past first, making not only Dracula's Curse as the origin story of the series, but the Game Boy games too, which bridged the gap between the eras of Trevor and Simon. And all of this before the SNES was even released. There were a lot of limitations at the time. The game developers didn't let that get in the way of telling the story that they wanted to tell. And it came out great, even better than the original story-wise. So now this is where the video is going to get real. I've never heard anyone complain about the things I've already mentioned. It's widely agreed that Simon's Quest's graphics, music, and story are pretty good. It's the gameplay that ruins it for most people. And it's all because of one problem. The first Castlevania used a linear level progressing style, but Castlevania II used an open world style, with towns to explore and 5 different mansions to locate. Not only that, but you have to use an XP system, and several more aspects were removed and added, such as the hidden items and candles and walls of the first game, and the shops in the second game. Another aspect that a lot of people take issue with, which I feel the need to mention here, is the day-night system. Everyone hates the day-night system. You're just playing the game and all of a sudden a text box shows up on the screen for 10 whole seconds, and then all the towns are closed and the enemies are tougher. When it comes down to it, it's just annoying. And I can see how people would sort of let this annoyingness reflect across the entire game. A lot of people make it like the whole game is this way, but that's simply not the case. If you've never played the game to completion, now I will ask you to do so, and here's why. Sure, the game can seem intimidating, the map is giant, there's seemingly hundreds of items to gather, but let me alleviate some of that stress to new players. That giant map, it's really only this big. That massive arsenal of items, there's really only 25, 5 of which are parts of Dracula that you have to collect, and 3 of which are completely optional, and several other optional items that are very helpful to have but are no means necessary. So you really only have to collect about 18, and most of them are given to you pretty simply by the game. There's mainly 2 aspects to playing the game: killing enemies to farm hearts, which are the game's currency, in order to buy a new item from town, and then progressing through the main story, which involves trekking to each manor and making your way through them. The game itself is really not that long either. I beat it in the day before, and even then it wasn't like I spent my whole day on it, or anywhere near that. It can be 100% completed in under an hour, and even for beginner players, it shouldn't take more than 2.5 hours. Compare that to the original Castlevania, which takes around 45 minutes to beat. See, it's really not too bad. There's really only 6 areas of the game, and you found around 5 items in each area. I hope this helped you feel less intimidated by the game if you're considering playing it. The gameplay is severely underrated. Bosses are the area where this game completely falls flat. I know I just reviewed Donkey Kong Country, another game with overall lackluster bosses, and I'll try to review a game with better bosses next time. But unfortunately, Castlevania II's bosses could not live up to the standards of the original Castlevania's bosses. The first game has only 7 bosses, and they're all pretty good. Unfortunately, Castlevania II has only 3 bosses, and they really dropped the ball with these. First of all, you might be upset to learn that the first 2 manors don't even have bosses. The first boss isn't located until the 3rd level, Bram's Mansion. It's the Grim Reaper, a boss who was very difficult in the first game, close to impossible. But unfortunately, he's a complete joke here. In fact, you can completely skip this boss. The only plus side to actually killing him is that you can get the golden knife, which makes the next boss easier. Spoiler alert, it hardly needs to be easier. The second boss, located in the 5th mansion, Laruba Mansion, is Vampira. It's a possessed vampire mask that cries out fire. Essentially, this boss, depending on whether you did decide to defeat the Grim Reaper or not, is either wildly easy or hardly even a boss. You do have to beat this one, however, because it gives you the magic cross, which you need to get into Castlevania in order to burn the 5 parts of Dracula. Unfortunately, once you do this, spoiler alert for anyone who doesn't want to get the ending spoiled, Dracula returns from the dead as a wraith and attacks you with sickles. Some people complain that he looks like a Grim Reaper here rather than a vampire, but I get the idea that it's because you killed him last time and destroyed his body, so he has to assume a ghost form. However, this boss happens to be the worst in the game. It can be rendered completely useless by using the Holy Flame and spamming it on him until he dies. Anyways, that's Castlevania II. In a lot of ways, it's better than the original. Despite its flaws, I think it's a great game. Although I can see why a lot of other people don't like the game. I just think it's really underrated, that's all. Thanks a ton for watching. Be sure to see my Donkey Kong Country review if you haven't already, and give this video a like. And if you want to see more game reviews, smash that subscribe button to see more videos like this.